So this is Music Monday, and we're here with Classic J Dies and Gets 1 million streams. Let's see. Elijah Charette, congrats on the million. Thank you so much. If you haven't heard this, there's a link that we have on Twitter. Let me pull it up really fast, just in case you haven't already heard this song. Let's see. Gotta go back just a little bit. There you go. And that has the link to the track. So today I thought it'd be good to break down the session of Classic J Dies and Gets 1 million streams. If you don't know what this is, in celebration of Classic J Dies and Goes to Hell, excuse me, in celebration of Classic J Dies and Goes to Hell Part 1 getting 1 million streams on Spotify, we decided it would be a cool idea to surprise Jay and all of our fans with a cover. And this cover just contains tracks from me, William, and Jonas. So it's our own little rendition of it, in kind of a folk manner, but mostly just acoustic manner. There's no drums to it, so that's one thing that this session won't have. But it has a lot of other tracks, as you can see, that we're gonna sort of sift through and see about what all it takes to put it together. So the first thing that we had to do was we had to decide how we were going to rearrange everything, because we took the backing track essentially and tracked over that because it just made more sense at the end of the day. So we had that. Jonas is playing a uke bass on this, and if I'm not mistaken, one track is mic'd, one track is DI. And then we have a few ukulele tracks. A couple of them are mics, a couple of them are direct lines. And then we have some guitar tracks, some acoustic guitar tracks. Some are from William. These are from William. These are from William. These are from William. And then these are from Jonas. Then we have some lead guitar tracks, which are also acoustic, which these are from me. Then we have some kazoo tracks, which William and Jonas provided. And then we have the vocal tracks, which have, as you can see, the lead vocal track is, I just put that as my voice because I was recording my voice here first before I got William and Jonas's tracks. But but you can see I have William and Jonas's vocals there, as well as some extra tracks. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a listen first and foremost.
you left me paralyzed, trying to keep my head above the waves, holding out for brighter, better days.
Your voice just lift me up to let me down. Every single time you come around, I'm making friends who don't know who I am, trying to turn the hurt into a brand.
Night. I'm blue dreaming about the better times. Anything to bring me close to you, anything to take me back to Friday nights. Foggy streets and Christmas lights wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again, and I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone. Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone. Na, 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 na.
Cool. So that's it's obviously got a lot going on. Despite the fact that it's only guitar, vocals, bass, and some kazoo. But let's see what we're doing here. So we each were trading up parts on here, which is why you can hear different voices throughout. All these parts are mine. All these parts are Williams. All these parts are Jonas's. And then there's some extra tracks here, which this, I believe, is some extra stuff from Jonas. And then we have some like supporting vocals and whatnot. The first thing that I wanted to make sure and do is get the bass sounding good, because when we start out, let's take a listen to the bass in this section where it's kind of active. So if we remove all the processing that we've got here, so definitely not like a bad sound starting off, but I definitely didn't want that much of the fret sound coming through on everything, as it could be kind of distracting a little bit. So I did a little bit of processing on that, and let me pull this up here. So I had to pull out some spots on an EQ just to make it a little bit smoother, and we'll kind of listen through here. So it sounds a little bit more like a double bass sound more than anything. And then I wanted to compress it to get it sounding a little bit tighter. And since this had the the fretting on it, so that they gave it that attack, I wanted to have a slight amount of saturation so that it could have that aggression on top of it. Just because I think that really can work well. And obviously you don't want to do too much with this because this isn't a metal track, so the bass doesn't have to sound heavy, obviously, and it's a uke bass, so you're not going to get it sounding heavy. But yeah, if we take a look at what's going on here, though, you can see that I dipped out this frequency. I dipped out a little bit of this. And that's where it was really bad. Every once in a while I forgot how good and human an actual bass guitar can sound. Well, that's the funny thing, Thrillby, is that this is a uke bass, which is kind of funny when you think about it and trying to mix it. It's not too far off from mixing the live bass, but yeah. But I wanted to get rid of that really harsh clicking sound, at least a little bit of it, and you can hear there's a little bit of boominess there that kind of muddies up a little bit of what's going on here. And the main thing to keep in mind is that I'm gonna pull that out because of the fact that at the end of the day, this track is not gonna be for the fatness, since it's got that fret attack, or that fretting sound that gives it that attack in it. I'm gonna want to use it more as more of a mid high end tonality to the bass guitar, because when you have multiple tracks like this to work with on the bass, especially whenever you have direct lines versus mic'd stuff, you can honestly play around with direct lines more than you can with mic'd stuff. So a lot of times when you have certain tonal qualities in one track of a set of tracks, so here we have these two, and this one, move that back. This one has the fret attack, whereas if you listen to the other one, even without all the processing, just sounds like a regular bass. So instead of focusing on trying to take up more of that space that this track is trying to fill in, I decided to use this to fill in more of the mid and higher range of frequencies that it covers, just so I could focus this on being more smooth sounding. And in the end, which one was mic'd? The one with the fretting sounds was mic'd. So this one. And this is what it sounds like raw. And the way you can really tell is the fact that it has those fretting sounds. Because unless you're using, unless you have a pickup that is somehow getting actually hit by the strings, you'll be able to tell instantly, because you can hear all that fret noise, whereas there's none of that. So it's a little bit easier to tell that that's DI'd. And like I said, DI you can play around with a little bit more. Mic stuff, you're usually gonna get tonal qualities and certain things based on like the microphone you use, where you mic'd, and all that different stuff. And you just gotta use that to your advantage. Like I said, here, since I had the Freddy noises, I decided to capitalize on that. Give it a really, like a mid-higher range tone to the bass. Whereas down here, it starts out pretty fat as is. So it's already pretty good. But I wanted to cut out, because you can see here I tried to boost and cut some stuff originally, but I was like, I eventually found myself saying like, you know what, I don't really need all of this high end on this part of the track, so I just cut all that out, and you can hear it sounds slightly smoother. So without the EQ and with, has more of that fatness. How long did it take to mix this? Well, funny you should ask that. We started working on it on a Tuesday, and we met at 11 a.m. and decided the game plan, and then from there we went and recorded our tracks, and spent most of the afternoon doing that. And I didn't start mixing until about I think it was like 8. So in actuality, I would say about 4 hours. And a key part to remember is that I mixed all of this, and the kazoo tracks didn't get properly sent that night. So like in the morning, I had to do like a quick, like, throw them in there, get them blended and mix really fast and get this done. And I'll show you some of the shortcuts that I did to like reach there. But yeah, about 4 hours, so not a long time. I usually like to spend a full day at the very least on getting a rough mix a lot of the times, because I want to make sure that I spend an adequate amount of time considering stuff. So usually mixing can take me anywhere between 1 to usually 2, but sometimes 3, depending on how long the track is and how many tracks are in it, days total. So, but this individual session took 4 hours, just about, which means that I did have to compromise on stuff. I couldn't make it perfect, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, so this was a relatively quick mixing job for me. So continuing with this, so now that I've got a little bit of focus on this like lower end and the subs and this bass, I compressed that because I wanted to make sure that I had a good amount of control on it, because you want to have control over your low end, because otherwise it can get a little bit boomy in the peaks, and it can sometimes drown out other stuff. So having a good amount of control on your low end is usually a really good thing to make sure of. I don't think I could ever mix something in just one day. After a while, my brain just turns everything into mush, and I have to stop. There have been times when I've continued working after that point and ruined the song. That makes sense, and that's the big thing, is knowing your workflow and knowing what is a healthy process for you is probably the most important thing. Because here's the deal. If an engineer says that it takes them 12 hours to mix a song, that 12 hours may not be in one day, as some people might assume. You might be really pressed for time in a lot of ways and be working on multiple projects and maybe only able to spend like 4 hours a day mixing. So in actuality, it could take you 3 days, which is why I usually recommend to people, if you're doing freelance recording, unless it's a hold on just a second. Sorry, something moves at my keyboard. But unless you have someone who unless you're doing a session where it's like you're in there with the musician, and which then I would charge an hourly rate personally whenever I'm working with someone like in a studio and we're watching like the hours go by. But if it's if someone is handing me something to mix and I'm really focusing on that thing, I usually charge day rates, because the truth is that like if you mix as long as you can until your ears like start to get worn out, or like your brain sort of just like you said, kind of goes to mush, you've used up energy for that day. You've used up your concentration for that day. And or spoons, some people might say you've used up all your spoons. And the thing is that some people might see that and be like, well, you only did 4 hours of mixing, you can't call that a full day. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because if you know how your brain works, and you know, if you're confident in your skills up until that point, then it is worth it, because they're paying you for your engineering skills. And it would be ridiculous of you to work past the point that you feel you are useful and productive, because providing them with a subpar product will not be, satisfying for you. So if you can only mix for 4 hours a day before your brain sort of goes to mush, don't sweat it. And maybe you can try different things. Maybe there's some people that like you may just need to take like a few hours of a break. But if you find it that like that's really just the healthy point for you, the healthy time limit for you, stick with that. Don't go beyond that. Don't sacrifice your mental well-being and burn yourself out on it. Yeah, it might take you a few more days to do certain things, and you might end up charging more of an hourly rate based on this, but it's better that you do what is healthy for you and provide a quality product for whoever you're like working for, or whoever your client is. For me, this was the big thing you have to realize too, is that I had an obvious deadline with this. I couldn't spend all night working on it, and I wanted to make sure that whenever I did mix it, that I was able to get it to a certain point, and I had to ask myself, what was I willing to compromise and sacrifice? One of those things was super tight editing. I wasn't able to edit things as tightly as I would have normally, just because I didn't have the time to do it. And I also didn't have the time to ask for like certain alternate takes of like different parts and whatnot, which I would normally do after receiving the tracks. I'd be like, hey, can you just give me like a small cut of like this section of the song just for like this instrument, because I think I want to have a few more takes of it. But like I said, we didn't have that, so I just had to kind of compromise with that. And I think that recognizing that is important, because some people will listen to this and be like, oh, this mix isn't that immaculate, and I'll say, yeah, you know what, it's not, and I'm fine with that, because guess what, it's a 4-hour mix, man. You can't, this isn't like, top chart quality mixing. I'm not gonna say that, because I didn't get to put the time into it. But I'm still confident in my skills, and I know what I can do. And that's the biggest thing, is this was all for fun. And if someone bases my mixing skill on something that I just did for fun in a few hours, then I don't have confidence that person recognizes my skill for what it is. But yeah, so continuing on, like I was saying, I had the EQ cutting out all the high end, boosting like some sub frequencies and lower end stuff to give more power to the low end. I have a compressor so that I can control more of the low end, make sure it's tight and not like going all over the place. And then lastly, I like using this Pro Subharmonic plugin the Pro series that's native to Pro Tools, and just because you can add some sub frequencies and it can sound really cool. I usually tend to use just a hair of it on my master bus. But yeah, you might be able to hear the very slight difference, but and then we're gonna add it in. It almost like smooths some stuff over by adding a little bit more of those frequencies. And someone based my mixing skill on a Family Guy Death Grips parody I made 3 a.m. I think I'd lose faith in. Yeah, exactly. That's my thing. That's my thing. You have to understand that as a freelancer, there will always be people who will try to scam you out of doing your skills for cheaper, because we live in a capitalist society. That's just kind of part of it. And it's a very important lesson that you not compromise with people who are hell-bent on underpaying you for your skills. Because if I'm looking for an engineer to mix something, granted I am an engineer, but let's use an example of something that I don't do. If I'm looking for a woodworker, to build me a desk, a really nice hand carved desk or whatever, just like some, or not hand carved, but like, just a really nice fancy desk. And I look at this person's social media page and I see that they've made like a Pepe the Frog statue or whatnot. Now, granted, I'm probably going to check and make sure that they're, that they are not, they're not putting Pepe out for the wrong reasons, because, there's the fucking right wingers who like use that as a symbol. But like, if I see something like that, like a really weird thing, and it's just like a goofy little statue, and I see and like the woodworking and like sanding's not perfect and whatnot, I'm not gonna look at that and be like, oh well, I can't pay you like this much, like can't you like look at this, like look at what you did here. I'm not gonna do that, because that's a dick move. I'm gonna look at what that person considers to be their portfolio, what they consider to be their good work, because that's what I want to hire them to do, is their good work. I don't want to hire someone to, I might hire someone to do a little goofy thing and whatnot, but I'm not going to hire someone just based off of like stuff that they did for fun, that they aren't going to, they aren't going to consider like a piece that they're super proud of, I've drawn like I did some I'll give you an example. I'll give you a real life example of this. So while we were on tour, I'm sure y'all may have seen that there was a goofy picture where like whenever you clicked on Twitter, it would like warp an image for like a second, and sometimes it would freeze on that warping of it whenever you open the image. And it happened to Dax, and we got this really weird picture of us, of Dogleg and Glass Beach together. And I just sketched everybody in it as like drawings, including myself. And like you can see, like this. Yeah, they're goofy little sketch dudes. Same thing right here. Yeah, just goofy little things. Now, here's the deal. If anybody in their right mind decided that was something to judge my artwork skills on, and say like, well, I can't hire you and pay you an adequate amount because I've seen you draw that, and they ignore something I'm working on like this, then they're not worth my time. They're not someone who's genuinely interested in me bettering my skills and providing them with a product. They want a quick, fast, and easy product that they don't have to pay a whole lot for. They don't understand the craft. And that's fine. Those people exist, and they will always exist. And I'm not going to I'm sure there's someone out there who would be willing to provide services for a reasonable price, but I'm trying to make a living. So, yeah, never sell your skills short, in other words, basically. So, now that I've sort of tamed the low end and emphasized the sub frequencies on that, I can combine the two tracks. So we have this for our low end bass track, and this for our high end track, and then together you combine them and the bass sounds like this. So it sounds really fat, lots of low end, which is good because we don't have drums, so we don't have a kick drum, so we don't have a whole lot of super low end to work with. So I have the bass taking up a whole good chunk of that. Now, in this song we have a few different people playing guitar. We have William playing guitar, Jonas playing guitar, me playing guitar, and we also have some ukulele tracks. Let's start with the ukulele tracks. Let's look at these. So originally I kind of wanted just to have like a single ukulele track playing here, but as I went, I kind of decided that I really liked how all four of them sounded together. So like, no, I'll show you what I mean. So if we just listen to one of these, oh, come on, why is sounds kind of glassy, a little, pretty nice. But I really like the way that, the panned uke tracks sound together, because I think it gives off kind of, it definitely a little glassy, a little beachy. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, is that I like, I'll show you what I mean. I like the way how it sounds like chimes almost. It shatters the illusion of one person playing ukulele, but it creates this chimey effect that I really like. And yeah, so we have that. And these uke tracks aren't like they don't have anything especially amazing going on. The line tracks are the main ones you're hearing. I have the mic tracks here, but they're like a whole lot lower. I kind of take this approach with a lot of instruments that are taking the lead on stuff, where I'll have them doubled, and I'll have the doubled track a lot lower, just enough so that it's sort of like boosting the main track, so you can hear, like, those are playing, those are kind of quiet, and those are louder, but when I add them all in, it has a little bit more fullness to them. So if you ever just have like an instrument that's just sort of like taking up a section like that, that can be a useful little trick. You don't need to do it. I just had the tracks to be able to do it. And thank you, Thrillby. I think it's pretty nice too. So the next part of the song has William singing along with some acoustic guitar. So I kind of took a similar approach to how the ukes were double tracked in this part. This guitar is double tracked, and since it's a solo guitar, what I decided to do was I decided to give it similar processing to the vocal tracks, because it was just the acoustic guitar and William, and I wanted it to sound like William was just playing guitar in a room, by themselves at first. So the acoustic guitar, this is what the main track. Oh, and I should probably go over this really fast. For the uke, I kind of did a lot of the like I did a lot of individual processing. Like some of it's pretty similar, but the idea is I went through with each one and I listened to like what each one needed. Because if we take away all the processing for a second, I'll show you what I mean. Oh, you can take a listen. Oh, come on. So it sounds fine right now, but I wanted it to have a little bit more high end, and I wanted to get rid of some of those mid frequencies, just to make it sound to have it take up less space, I guess you could say. I wanted it to have more of a glassy feel, like I was saying, and then a little bit of compression to keep it on level. But yeah, not a ton of processing there, just EQ and compression. For this verse guitar, I'll show you what I'm doing here. So this is how just the main track sounds by itself. So pretty minimalist on the EQ side of things. All I did was I high passed up to close to 100 hertz, which is around a good range to high pass guitars. You kind of want to operate it by ear and make sure you're not taking away from the full spectrum of the guitar, but you also want to make sure that you're not throwing in any extra frequencies that aren't adding something to the guitar, because anything that comes from the guitar track that's below like 80 hertz, most of the time I'm not gonna really need that for what the guitar is trying to do. I'm not saying you can't use it, but I am saying that like if you're trying to make a guitar sound like a guitar, that's not really much of a range that you need as much, unless you've got like an extended range 8 or 9 string guitar. But I dipped out some lower end because I wanted this to be this isn't an instrument that needed to have a ton of low end. We've got the bass to cover that. Found a couple spots where I thought I could do less of some stuff. Since there was a little bit of picking going on, it boosted around like 7K, which is usually a good frequency range to boost for like if you're doing leads that have picking and whatnot. So you can hear a very slight difference. And then I compressed it to bring it all the way up to an audible level. And then what I did, similar to the vocal processing, is I kind of did a similar thing. This is kind of the same EQ, just about, only a little bit more zoomed in, which is why these arcs seem a little bit bigger, but it's basically the same EQ. Similar compression, but I added this delay. And I've talked about this technique before, but if you ever have only 2 tracks but you want to make something sound like it's triple tracked and boosted, what you do with your double track that you're using to support the main track is you add a delay, a stereo delay, and on one side you add 30 milliseconds, around 30 milliseconds. You can bring it down to like 25 or up to like 35, 40. I wouldn't go beyond 40 though. And it'll give it more of a it'll make it sound like there's 2 panned tracks supporting the main track. And it's obvious when you hear the track soloed out. Like, I'll show you right here. So that's without it. This is with it. You can kind of tell it's the same track, just, panned and slightly delayed. But when it's added in, you can hear gives it a little bit more width and power, and it's only really audible if you're really listening for it. Elijah, yeah, thank you. It is definitely a cool trick that I learned when you're like hard pressed for time and you can't triple track some stuff, but you want to have more power from double tracked stuff. And you can hear that similar thing going on in Williams' track, which I did it also to kind of like blend it with the vocals, so you can hear like,
how could I ever sleep at night? My conscience
it kind of has the same thing going on. But yeah. And then the last thing I added to this guitar track was the reverb. So if you hear the guitar track, to blend it all together, we add in this reverb. But yeah. And so that's what I did for that. I suppose this would be a good time to look at Williams' vocals right here. Actually, no, yeah. We'll keep going with the guitars, and we'll come back to the vocals in a second. So after everything happens in that first verse, we go into the actual verse.
Make it feel more like
And that starts here. And so for this whole section, we have the rhythm guitar tracks, and then we have the lead and the solo section. So let's break that down. So there's not a whole lot going on with the rhythm guitar track. I've got some pretty some simple EQ that I've got going on here. I'll show you what it sounds like without any of the processing on it. So, oh, not that. So this is raw guitar right now, raw track. And both EQs on these guitars are similar, so. So you can hear that there's like some mid-range cut out there. A little bit of space made for the reason I did that is because right here, right around this area, close to the 700 range, is right where you'll hear some of the attack of the bass. So I wanted to make a little pocket of room for that. I cut out a little bit of low end. I boosted a small section of it, but I cut out a good chunk of it just because it didn't really need that extra low end, so I got rid of it, and then I added a little bit of the the brightness to the acoustic guitar right here, because that's really the area that the guitar is taking up, is that little 3-4K range, which you have to be a little bit careful with, because 3 to 4K can get really piercing. Like if you like, let's say you're just listening to this track, and then you decide to boost. You know, it's like that is really like piercing. So you have to be very moderate with the amount that you add of that. But the right amount can make it sound really bright and nice. And one thing that I really had to do with this track was make sure that the rhythm guitars, blended well with the lead guitars, because granted the lead guitar and rhythm guitar are like different enough that we could have them on different guitars, but I wanted to make sure that the guitars didn't sound like they were foreign to each other, you know, because sometimes you can get that where whenever you listen to a track, either the way that it's recorded or the audio, the artifacts in the audio, or like the tonality of the instrument can kind of clash with what's going on. But yeah, so I have that EQ going on here, cut out some mid-range, boosted a little bit of the high range. I dipped out a couple of like annoying frequencies and then compressed it to bring it up to level. I used pretty light compression on these because I didn't really need a ton. I just needed it to get to level and make sure it didn't go too far above. And since I didn't have any drums or anything like that, I panned these guitars wide, just because I wanted them to be far. I wanted them to be like on the far sides of things so that it could sound really wide. Now over that is the lead, and the way we had to work with this is that in the original song the guitar part's a little bit different. It's more of like a riff that plays off of the roots of the chords, whereas like what we decided to do was replace that with the chord strumming, and then there's a lead that Jay plays that's higher up, and I decided to take that instead, and that's what this is. So and you can hear a little bit of room noise and a little bit of me breathing and whatnot, just because like I don't live in a treated space and whatnot, and I have to track these kind of fast. But you know, the hardest part about this was that guitar that I played, it sounds nice. Had to fix that really fast, but it sounds really nice. The problem is it's got a couple of dead spots on the fretboard, so I had to be a little careful with stuff. You can see some of these like editing cuts and whatnot, and some of these are literally just things of like I hit a note and I had to boost it a little bit because there's a slightly dead spot on the guitar's fretboard. I really have to get it set up, but I didn't really have time to do more takes than what I did, which is part of the compromise that I made. But it's, you know, ended up sounding all right. So this is without any processing. This is just the raw guitar track. Now, since I was tracking close to the mic, I got rid of a lot of the low end, not only because this is a lead guitar, but because of possible proximity effect issues, which, if you don't know, proximity effect is essentially just the issue of when you track really close to a mic, especially mics that have issues with proximity effect, like SM58s. Sure, SM58s have a lot of proximity effect issues, and what that means is that when you get really close to it, it boosts the low end a lot, like that. And so whenever you track things really close to the mic and it has that proximity effect, you want to cut out some of the low end to make sure that it's balanced. And so so I did that partially because of proximity effect. I did it partially because of the lead also. Boosted a couple of frequencies that I thought sounded nice, just a hair of low end, some of these mid-range frequencies. I cut out a little bit of this 3K because I felt like it was a little piercing. Cut out a little bit of this 9K because I think it was a little bright. You can hear the difference. Without. With. And then I added some compression to level it out. And then obviously reverb. And so that ends up sounding altogether like this. And yeah, Devon K Twitches. Whoa, this is awesome. Thank you, Devon. Yeah, I do this every Monday. If you haven't seen Glass Speech, we're a band, and I've started doing these production streams weekly, where I either like break down mixes or go over some stuff or challenge myself to do stuff and just try to provide a little bit of educational tidbits for it. And also, there's like I have like a forum out now for people to submit mixes if they want like any critiques or anything done that I do at the end of sessions, which you'll see at the end of this. I dig the heck out of you guys. I watched y'all play Fall Guys, but this is really neat. Oh, awesome, sweet, yeah, Fall Guys, something I'm less good at, but yeah. But yeah, I do this every Monday, usually 1 p.m. to about 4:30. And yeah. Oh, Jiraiya. Hey, really love hearing about the decisions behind this stuff. Oh, awesome. I'm glad that this stuff is helpful to y'all. If y'all don't listen to Jiraiya's music, y'all should. They just came out with a new music video for their song Pressure Bomb, right? That's make sure I'm getting that right. Yeah, Pressure Bomb. Yeah, and it's really good. Jiraiya's an amazing musician and an amazing animator, and y'all should definitely be listening to their music. Of course, yeah. Anything to plug the homies, but yeah. So, as I was saying, and for the compression for this, to get back to this, the compression for the lead, has a little bit of a harder ratio than the rhythm guitars up here. You know, like here it's 1.7 to 1, whereas like down here it's 2.6 to 1, and that's just because the lead needs to be a little bit more consistently above everything and at the same level. So I made it slightly harder, but not a ton harder, because acoustic guitar doesn't need that much. And as it goes on, we have a solo section, which we'll listen to. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the solo was a weird thing because it was really fun to write this one, but the biggest problem I had with it was those dead notes on this guitar, which was kind of an issue that I was facing. But what I decided to do was use it to my advantage in some ways, since it had a little bit more of a percussive feel. Instead of taking my usual approach to solos, which people usually hear like more of like a metal shreddy influence on, I decided to add a little bit of I guess you could call it more of like a Latin style sounding like guitar solo at the end, which is why it has a little a little deal right there. But yeah, so for this solo track, I really wanted to make sure it stood out. So the biggest thing that I wanted to make sure is I wanted to get rid of all the frequencies that would be distracting from what I wanted it to sound like. So let's solo this out. And so this is what it sounds like. No processing. And if we add in the EQ, without, with. And what I was doing here, so here's a really important lesson, I think, for anybody who's mixing. If you're ever mixing and you are finding that you're not getting the exact tonality you want out of something, the first thing I recommend, above all, is to remove the things that you don't want. And start in moderation. Go extreme if you need to, but start in moderation, because you can see that there's more extreme dips than there are. There's more extreme cuts than there are boosts in this EQ, and the reason for that is because there's a bit of an auditory illusion that goes on with this kind of stuff, where a lot of people they'll boost something that they really want, and then they'll be like, I still can't hear it, so then they'll cut whatever they don't want. And the problem is that a lot of times that'll overcompensate, because when you take something away that's muddying up a track or a sound, then it usually makes room for stuff so that you can clearly hear stuff. So sometimes the frequencies you want sound louder than they did before, just because you like cut out something that was muddying it up. And that's just a strange illusion that a lot of our ears are subject to. So I always recommend cutting out frequencies that you feel like are removing from the tonality of what you want in an instrument. Because then if you need to boost more, you can, but at least you've taken away most of what is clouding up stuff. Oh yeah, I run into that issue ton. Yeah, it can be really hard, because I think that makes the difference of like whether or not a track is something that needs to be redone. Is I'll take a look at the EQ, and the last episode I did on this, I did over using incomplete tracks on an old session. That last episode was kind of more of a thing of like, how do you work whenever you know you can't retrack, but you've got some tracks there? They're less than ideal. But anytime that you can, and you find yourself trying to cut out like certain things and whatnot, anything that you can do in the tracking process to eliminate this is good. Obviously track in an isolated space, use a quality instrument if you can. If you got like electric guitar, adjust like your amp settings and whatnot. But like once it's on the session and it's a track that you have to work with, that's really the process that I suggest working with. Always cut before you boost. This is especially important for live sound. If you do live sound at all, that is a very important rule. It's less important in studio stuff because you can afford to mess around. There's not you're not mixing for Sum 41 on stage, and there's not an entire crowd whose ears are going to get blown up if you accidentally boost something while you're in session, whereas like live, it's like if you're mixing like a dad rock band at a dive bar and whatnot, it's like everybody's hearing's already shot. You don't want to make it worse, so like you have to be very careful. But that's why I also advise like, make good habits. So yeah, cutting before you boost is super important. I didn't do a ton of boosting, as you can see, mostly just because I didn't really need to, because it gets excessive if you do too much. Like I don't know if I want to mess with too much of this, but yeah. See, that's already like too much. And so I was really trying to boost in moderation. But I also put a low pass filter on this, which you won't use as often as high pass filters a lot of times. But I used one on the bass, as you saw above, to cut out high frequencies. And when you track frequencies that have a lot of like hissing sound, it can sometimes help. So like, let's see. So I kind of deadened out the room noise by putting on that low pass filter, because part of the issue is that you're gonna get hissing from like the wind blowing from like we have an AC unit that blows into my room, and we have a fan, or I've got a fan in my room, and you're gonna hear like from like breathing and whatnot, and that's like higher end stuff. So if you need to, like, using a low pass filter can help, and it can even really be useful for certain electric guitar tracks. I use it whenever I really just need an electric guitar track to be like darker. I'll low pass some of it just to help it a little bit. It seems like it can be dangerous sometimes with certain sounds. You don't want to do it on like a flute or a really high end like an instrument that has a lot of high end. So definitely use it in moderation, but it's a useful tool, and it doesn't get used as much, but it has its uses, especially in this scenario where I didn't have a whole lot of time to make my tracks perfect. So I added some compression, had about the same ratio as my lead, and the main difference here was that whenever I was mixing it, I used clip gain to lower some of these, some of the volume of these clips. So the track here isn't lowered at all. So it's a little bit louder by default, and I put a little bit more gain on it in this compressor. But the settings are pretty similar to this one, only just slightly different. This one's the threshold's a little bit higher up, which that just happened to work for that track, because all my settings couldn't really be 100% consistent throughout, so I had to like adjust compressors as I went from track to track. But yeah, so if we take a listen to it, this is without compression, and then if we add it in, makes it loud enough. And then something I like to do sometimes with leads, since this is an acoustic track, I had to be very, very delicate with this, but chorus is a really nice thing for leads and whatnot, because it gives a little bit of differentiation from the other things in the track. And since this is a solo, I felt like it was appropriate to differentiate it from the lead track. And granted, I only have like 13% of it in there. But yeah, it's very slight. Without, with, without, with. It's just very slight. Like it's barely audible whenever everything's mixed in. But it's a little thing that I like to do every now and then. And for this, it just happened to work. And then we have reverb to like tie it all in together. And it ends up sounding like this.
Turn the herd into a brand.
And if it wasn't obvious, I have my my lead tracks all centered, as opposed to my rhythm tracks, which are wide panned, and that's obviously to take up different space in the sound field, in the sonic spectrum. But yeah, so we have all of that, and then as we go, we find ourselves into the soft section, which is technically the first chorus. This part was fucking terrible to track because the chords are a little weird. Not weird, but very specific, I guess you could say. But yeah, and this was my rhythm guitar track. And I didn't have to do a ton of EQ, just did a boost on the high end, a little boost on the low end, cut out the mids. Did some compression. Did it a little bit harder on this to keep them at a certain level, because there's a lot of vocals in in this section in particular. So I wanted to make sure the guitar was very tame and controlled in this section. You know. And then with reverb. Without the processing. With the processing. But yeah. That's pretty straightforward. Then we get to this section where it's Jonas strumming. Just thinking about playing those chords on acoustic current. Oh yeah. Let me yeah, some of the chords are like pretty simple. Like this one's just, and then the hard part were things like what was it? Yeah, just a lot of like switching. But yeah. Oh, and we also decided another thing we had to change about this was that we obviously don't have any trumpets at my place or William and Jonas's place. So we replaced like the trumpet line from the song with the guitar does something that it mimics what the trumpets do for a little bit, but I decided to extend that out and have it play the entire like ending section, which is oh yeah, here let me and because there's a little bit of a slowing down there, I had to do some slight editing to make sure that the guitars were lined up just right, because otherwise it would sound a little bit staggered and be like dong, 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 and it'd sound like a slight delay and wouldn't work super well, considering that that's it's not quite the same thing as like the ukuleles in the beginning. But yeah, let's talk about this though. This was Jonas's like folk punk strumming kind of stuff. So, because here's the things. Friday nights, foggy streets, and Christmas lights. But here's the thing. With any instrument, not just where you mic it, but how you play, it's going to make a big difference in how you EQ it. So it's while you can use it as a template to just like take the same EQ, copy and paste as a starting point, I advise if you change up your playing style to change up like your EQ settings, because like this was Williams chord strumming, and that's the EQ that's on that. This is Jonas's, you know, and then this was mine. And the reason that theirs is a little bit more complicated looking is because I had a little bit more control over my like recording process, so I knew like what I wanted to do specifically. So there's a lot less for me to like do some work ahead of time for. So that's just kind of a thing. You'll encounter that you may have a little bit more. You may have your EQ looking a little bit more like this when you're set tracks, just because you don't know how someone's going to track something, and this isn't necessarily bad at all. The tracks that William sent me are great, but you may just end up having to do a little bit of extra work because you don't know the environment it was tracked in and whatnot. And I'm also trying to make sure that all these guitars sound similar enough that it blends seamlessly and it doesn't sound like, oh yeah, these are completely different guitars. Who wants to go caroling when we only sing this song? I would love to go Christmas caroling with singing Classic J Dawson Goes to Hell. But yeah, so you know, both of these EQs are like that. Something like that. So what I was doing there is I was cutting out a little bit of this mid range, like I said, for the bass, but I was boosting like I was getting rid of some troublesome frequencies that I was noticing from the percussiveness of that playing. Feels like it would, yeah. I mean, honestly, it's kind of a Christmas song in a lot of ways, but yeah, I do a lot of this little dipping. How do you get that Christmassy feeling to that part of the song? I'm not entirely sure. I think if I'm being honest, I think it's mostly the lyrics that do a lot of the heavy lifting for that. I think it's a mixture of the lyrics, and I think it's also that Jay's writing is very influenced and informed by jazz, and I think that there's a lot of the minor four entirely. Yeah, well, yeah, and that's kind of the thing, is that I think a lot of the chord progressions and the trumpets also help, but I think that a lot of the ways that Jay writes music, along with like the lyrics, I think that provides a lot of that feeling. But yeah, and let's see. So if we go back to this, you can hear that I after I like cut out some of the troublesome frequencies, I boosted a little low end and boosted a little high end, because I wanted that brightness there, but I wanted to make sure that I also had a little bit more body added to the guitar, because it felt a little too lightweight at the moment. So you can hear just a little bit, and I compressed it, brought them both up, added some reverb, not a ton. I didn't add a ton of reverb because I didn't want it to get washy. I wanted to add just enough to make it sound, wider and thicker and everything like that. And then you can hear, on top of the strumming, there's a little section right here of my octave playing, which for this guitar, I cut out a good chunk of the low end because I didn't need it. There's so much of this guitar taking up the mid and lower range along with the bass that it was like, I literally just need these octaves to be audible. I don't really need them to be. I don't really need. They won't be standing on their own throughout any of the song. And then continues on like that. Oh. And it continues on to the last section. So you can see what I did with the EQ there. The compression, kind of the same settings as the lead, just slightly tweaked to make it work for that. And then the outro guitars, we take a listen to these. Now you'll notice that this outro guitar section is quad tracked, not just double tracked. And you'll see right here that I've panned two of them wide, but I've also panned two of them to be just about in the middle. So there's two taking up like the really wide space right here, but there's also a couple that are right here, leaving a little section right there. And I did that to add some extra texture and depth to the sound that is all the vocals that are happening on that section, because we got 4 vocal tracks that are going on, and in those this one has both Jonas and William, this one has both Jonas and William, and both of these are mine. So in actuality, 2, 4, 6 Yeah, it's 6 voices along with 4 guitars makes it sound really like wide and big. And so we have that going on there. And this one was pretty simple. I boosted a little bit of low end to give it some body. Got rid of the mid-range for the bass. Boosted a little bit of the 2.5K here to, brighten it up. And then I got rid of some pesky frequencies up here, as well as to make some room for the octave lead that's going on there. And these are kind of all the same. I use similar compression settings to my guitar in the clean first chorus because I wanted this guitar to be very tame and not overshadow the vocals. And so you can hear, along with the octave guitar, this is kind of what it sounds like. And I didn't add anything from the lead guitar onto this last section because I felt like that William Jones did a great job of this section. It's very chaotic, very nice, and I liked it a lot. So I kept that there. And that's pretty much like what the guitars sound like. And they kind of just end off like... let's take a listen to that actually. At the very end. Just a lot of strumming, a lot of chaos, and boom. There we go. Now, before we get to the vocals, let's take a brief look at these kazoos. The kazoos were the last things to get added in, and they aren't super prominent. And the reason being is that if you haven't guessed, kazoos are pretty fucking hard to stay in tune with. It's not exactly an instrument that is super easy to be on pitch with, and so we had to do a little bit of work with these. And this was kind of worked towards the end whenever I had to like start taking some, not exactly shortcuts, but basically like doing things in a more, basically being like, I have to like compromise here, do what I can, speed up the process. So what I have going on here is with all the kazoos, I have them compressed, pretty much the same settings, so that they're all up to volume. And then I have them de-essed, and I have them de-essed because if you take away the de-essing, I'll show you what I mean. So that's without the de-essing. And so I added that de-essing in, as you can hear, to sort of smooth off the higher end of stuff. If you don't know what de-essing is, it's a similar thing to frequency dependent compression, and it's the idea of you choose a point in the frequency spectrum, preferably higher up. This one goes from 500 hertz upwards to 16K. I have it set at about 6.7K. Chainsaw Orchestra, just about. But I have it compressing at about minus 3.5 dB. And for a point of reference, think of it this way: 6 dB is what 6 dB is what is objectively twice as loud as if you go from 0 dB to plus 6 dB, you have doubled the volume. If you go from 0 dB to minus 6 dB, you have half the volume. Now here's the thing: human ears don't perceive it quite that same way, and you might train your ears to hear that, but the average human ear starts perceiving around 3 or 4 dB of change to be halve or double, just because, like I said, there's a lot of ways in which auditory illusions inform the way that we casually listen to stuff, and that's kind of the way that it works. Most people do not start hearing an audible change until after like 2 dB, which is why that's around, like, usually making 1 dB of change is just enough to like make a slight change that's barely noticeable. But I put 3.5 because I didn't want it to actually have the volume of that range. I just wanted it to be audible, that it was getting bumped down so that it wasn't piercing people's ears, especially because I need that range for the lead guitar, because the 6-7K is sort of like the picking range of lead guitar stuff. So if you have a lead that has a lot of picking or a lot of notes or anything like that and plucking, then that's usually a good range for that. So I cut right below that, or had it de-essed right below that, just so the lead guitar could pop through a little bit more and it wouldn't overcome it, you know. Did someone in Glass Beach play kazoo prior to this song, or was that a new development for the special occasion? William and Jones had kazoos. I assume that they played them. I don't know how. I don't know how much they practiced it. I can't imagine that they've like diligently practiced every day and night or anything like that. But I believe that they've played it before and used it in performances before. I thought you had to triple the volume to perceive double the volume. Not exactly. Here's my thing is that it really depends on person to person. Someone who is trained in this kind of stuff will be able to tell the difference between a 3 dB change and a 6 dB change. A 6 dB change, like I said, is objectively going to be either doubling the volume or halving the volume. 3 dB is going to be boosting it by about like half of or instead of bringing the volume up double, it's bringing it up about 50%, or bringing it down about 50%, and that is usually at least what the average human perceives as like doubling or having the volume. At least that was what I was taught. There are some people who may not hear that. There's some people who might, you know, like you said, you might have to triple the volume, which would be, you know, 12 dB. But the problem is that, like, I'll give you an example. So, yeah, let's use this. So we have this one track right here, because I had to. Pro tip: if your kazoos are off, you can tune them a little bit. Melodyne is fantastic for that. Okay, so let's bring this to the output, and let's just listen to this. And let's take it, separate it, and zoom in a little bit. So that's regular volume. This is a 6 dB increase. Wait, hold on. No, that's probably why. Hold on just a second. So this is, like I said, regular. Bring it up 6 dB. And then if we bring it back down, So that was 0, 6, and then back to 0. This is about, we'll do 3.5 so that you can have a little bit. So that's a little bit louder. It's audibly louder, but it's usually not going to be perceived as double the volume. Now, if we go from 0 dB up to 12, which would be triple the volume. Hold on, that's weird. That's not right. Yeah. Yeah, this track's kind of hard to demonstrate with, I think, because it doesn't have a whole lot of dynamic changes going on. But yeah, in short, if you want to hear the difference, that's regular level. That's double the volume. And then back to regular. And that's about 3. Back to regular. And then 12. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would say to like look at it is, think of 3 dB as what most people will be like, oh yeah, I got like twice as loud. But in actuality, 6 dB is twice as loud. It's kind of a weird thing. There's a whole lot of nuance to the way that we hear sounds and acoustical changes versus what the actual objective numerical changes in terms of like measurement and whatnot. But yeah, it's weird. In short. Yeah, Jiraiya, Melodyne is amazing. I love it. It's a fantastic program. If you're looking for a good tuning program, it is really good. So is Auto-Tune, but I like Melodyne for the most part for what I need. Yeah. So I had these de-essed and compressed. And then what I started doing here, since these are the last things to get put in here, was I started using Neutron to help a little bit with this, because Neutron is a great program. It's an isotope program, and they make a lot of really good mixing tools as well as some mastering tools. But I absolutely love this program, and its Track Assist program can help provide you with a template or a preset to it'll listen to the track, and you have a couple settings that you can do, like you can choose warm, balanced up front. You choose one of the instrument types or other, and then whenever you hit next, it listens to it and what wait, okay, hold on just a second. Neutron's being weird. There we go. But yeah. But yeah. So as you can see, I've got a couple of I've got Neutron set like on these 3 tracks, and I have them doing a few different things. Jesus Christ. Hold on. There we go. That thing always pops up and it's a little annoying. But yeah, so what I have going on with these tracks is I have an equalizer, and the equalizer is dipping out a little bit of this lower end, putting in a little bit of this like 1.5K like middle range, or is this like 2K? 1.6, close enough. And then there's like a hair of gain over here, and a high pass on this, and these are pretty much all the same on that in that term. And then we got a compressor here, which is like coming down pretty hard on it, like honestly, like a 9.3 to 1 ratio. But that's just to make sure that it's really tame, because these don't need to be super present, they just need to be audible. And that's kind of the deal, because they're not the main focus and they're not super clean or like anything like that. So, you know, like I said, I tuned what I can, but you can't fix the every problem with pitch on something with Melodyne. It can help a whole lot, and you can get some great pitch correction out of it, but just know that at a certain point, with enough pitch issues or deviations from pitch, it could just be easier to retrack it. And that's kind of that thing. I also tried to make it warmer to roll off a little bit more of that high end by adding that on the exciter section of it. So what it ends up sounding like is, take a listen here. Not a massive change, but just enough to keep it tame and make it a little bit warmer, less bright and piercing. And that's kind of all I did with that. I didn't really do a ton of processing with that. I didn't spend a ton of time on the kazoos. Like I said, they're not super present throughout most of the song, so, you know, whatever. So, with that being said, let's move on to probably the most interesting part, the vocals. So the way that this worked was that William and Jonas tracked their parts, and they did harmonies for each other, and they provided some harmonies for my sections as well, and then they sent it over. What I decided to do was I tracked my part, which was this, and this section is like all of us singing the same part together, and then I decided, hey, why don't I add some harmonies to really good spots? So let's start with William's section. So William has this section going.
How could I ever sleep at night?
So it cut out some low end on William's voice. I also didn't do pitch correction on this beginning part, and the reason I did it is because it's just guitar and William's voice, and I wanted it to feel more homey and very it just like very organic. Like I wanted the slight pitch deviations to be in there because I wanted it to sound very intimate, and that can be something that's done to taste. You know, it varies from person to person, but yeah, I boosted right around 1.4K. A big thing about boosting this section of the frequency spectrum for vocals is that you want to feel around for the right spot, because every vocal timbre has a certain part of the frequency spectrum where their vocals shine, and you really want to focus on highlighting that. Cut out the parts that sort of muffle up and overshadow the good qualities of someone's vocals, and boost the section that makes it shine the most. And this will vary from person to person. You'll see mine is a little bit higher and requires a little bit less boosting, a little bit more lower end cut. And then Jonas's is also boosted a little bit higher, and I cut out some of these other frequencies to let his vocals shine also. So like I said, take the cut first, boost later approach to it, and try to search for the right spot for the vocals to shine. And as we continue, I'll show you what I mean. So no processing. We'll add compression so you can hear it.
My conscience left,
and you can sort of hear the backing vocal track right there.
Ceiling wide.
So And if we keep going, this is what it sounds like when we add in the EQ.
Ever sleep at night?
With.
My conscience left.
So it's just enough for it to sound brighter and have that that airiness sort of peek through, which I think is very useful in this scenario and works for Williams' voice throughout the song. I also there's the delay on the backing track, and on the main track I've added just a hair of saturation.
Sleep at night. My
Without.
conscience left
With.
me petrified, staring at the.
As you can see, like barely any. And if we look at the later vocals, whenever like Williams really belting,
Friday nights, foggy streets, and Christmas lights.
yeah, it's a very slight. Williams' voice doesn't need a ton of that, honestly. William has a very theatrical voice, and I think it's very it works very well in it being a very pristine sounding voice. So I don't add a ton of that. William's really got a voice. Yeah, William is an amazing singer. If y'all didn't know that, William is a great singer. Can sing really high too, which we'll hear later on over here. But yeah, so you'll hear like.
Got a decent job, and I got.
So all that's going on. Now, in this section, we've got some backing vocals sort of added in here. These are harmony tracks that William provided. So I added some I used Neutron to give it a little bit of a degree of separation from the lead vocal tracks. And that's the big thing, is that I try to use backing vocal tracks as more of like instrument tracks rather than vocals, because and this can apply to any kind of band that has it's like, think of it this way. You have your lead vocals, which are meant to be like in the front, but your backing vocals are meant to boost that. So instead I treat the backing vocals as if they were other parts of the instrumentation than the vocals. I consider them their own thing, sort of, and mix them in their own way, to give some slight separation between those things, but also make sure that they are conducive to everything else going on around it. Because if you try to make every single vocal track sound like it's a lead vocal track, you might be taking up too much space in the frequency spectrum and overshadowing other things, like a lead guitar, or just generally other instrument tracks in general. Because if you have a track with drums, for example, drums take up so much of the frequency spectrum. You got to be really careful with that. So that's the way that I view it. So I used Neutron to do that. I added some tape saturation, compressed it pretty heavily to keep it controlled, and then boosts some low end, dip out some mids, and add a little bit of high end. And what ended up from that is this little harmony right here.
Mistakes till I finally got a decent job, and I got a place I'll never own.
And something that I should point out is that with harmony vocals, unlike the lead vocals where like this section I didn't use any tuning whatsoever on, just to keep it more organic sounding, the harmonies, which are a little bit dialed back, I did use a little bit of tuning on those, because a lot like how if your bass is out of tune, then that really crumbles the foundation of your song. Which, pro tip, using Melodyne on bass is actually really fucking sick, or lead guitars. But for this, the harmony vocals really have to be spot on for the lead vocals to shine. So I did tune some of the harmony vocals. Now, not to a great degree, because you can solo these out, and you can hear there's not a ton of like. William's a great singer. I don't have to like correct their tuning a whole lot.
Till I finally got a decent job.
It's mostly slight deviations that happen naturally with most singers and whatnot. And yeah, that's all there is.
We'll knock some holes into the walls.
And in this next section, we have sort of a layered harmony thing going on. Jonas comes in right here.
Holes into the wall.
And you can hear that.
Into the walls to make it feel more like a.
So there we have Jonas singing that, and Jonas is doing that an octave down from William. And William's, like I said, doing the octave up. So, oh, try. Yeah, it's never occurred to me to use Melodyne something of the most. Yeah, it's super useful. I first got into the idea. There's a producer I saw use Melodyne on lead guitar, and I thought, that's pretty interesting. And then Jay talked about using it on bass, and I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. If you have something that needs to be super on pitch, using Melodyne on it's a very good idea, as long as it's not like super distorted, and the note is clear, and there's not like a ton of like, it's not like a chord with a ton of notes. Yeah, if you got a lead line, just use Melodyne on it to make it like super on pitch. Use it in moderation, obviously, because you don't want it to affect the sound too much, but you know. So with Jonas added in there,
Knock some holes into the walls to make it feel more like a home.
and I decided, hey, you know what that could use? Fucking harmony.
Walls to make it feel more like a home.
And so what ends up happening is I tracked this.
To make it feel more like a.
And yeah, and so that ended up being what we have here.
To make it feel more like a home.
And you can notice here that like this vocal track sounds very dark.
To make it feel.
And that's intentional. I boosted a lot of low end on this, similar to like what I did with these other tracks. Added a lot of tape saturation because I wanted these to sound warmer and darker, not to take up too much of the higher end area where the other vocals are like leading everything. So moving on, we have sort of Jonas's lead vocal debut right here, in this song at least, and
How could I ever sleep at night? When you left me paralyzed. Trying to keep my head above the waves, holding out for a brighter, better day.
So, let's see what we're doing here. So like I said, not a ton going on with the EQ. Dropped out some mid frequencies, boosted back in a little 1.8K. Cut out a little bit of some harsher frequencies so that whenever Jonas comes in, that it's not too straightforward, I guess you could say. I didn't want it to slap people in the face whenever Jonas came in. I wanted it to be like a smooth introduction. So I got the vocals compressed, ratio at 3:1. Just boosted it to the right level, and got
Could I
a little bit more
sleep?
saturation than I did with William, because I think Jonas's voice benefits from that warmth and that harmonic richness. So.
Could I ever sleep at night? When you left me paralyzed, trying to keep my head above the waves.
And then, as you can hear William added a little harmony.
Waves holding out for brighter, better days.
And then, as we move on, we got my vocal section. My vocals, the EQ was a little bit more complicated. I had to get rid of a little bit of this high-end stuff, a little bit of these, this 4.5K, cut out some low end, did some specific boosting to certain areas.
And you boys just lift me up to let me down every single time you come around.
And then Jonas added a
Every
little.
single time you come around, I'm making friends who don't know who I am, trying to turn the herd into a brand.
And as you can hear, you can hear the backing track, the doubled vocal track, kind of whenever everything is solo, but it doesn't really pop up whenever you have everything in context.
Let me down every single time you come around.
I also have some light harmonic tape saturation on my voice there, because I think at a certain level, whenever I get loud enough, it contributes to my voice, because I like my voice to sound smoother whenever I'm singing softer parts. But
Foggy streets and Christmas lights wake me up on Saturday.
yeah, and we'll get to that section in a little bit. But yeah, and then we have our little solo section. Now this section, I used a little bit more tuning on like this phrase right here, just because I wanted to make sure that their vocals lined up in terms of like them being in unison, because they're both singing.
Could I ever sleep at night?
And then William goes into a little harmony here.
I'm blue dreaming about the better times. Anything to bring me close to you. Anything to take me back to.
My cat is trying to eat my phone. I'm sorry, Thrillby. That's not nice of them. I really like this harmony from William.
I'm blue dreaming about the better times. Anything to bring me close to you. Anything to take me back to.
How they get softer there. William has a lot of great control over their voice. And
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights.
now, I did this section very much on purpose, in a certain way, because I recorded harmonies throughout this entire section, but I thought it would be really cool to cascade them. To have Jonas be the only person in, then William comes in with their harmony, and then I come in with my harmony. And then we're together for a little bit, my harmony falls away, and then William's harmony falls away, and it ends with Jonas saying, "Alone by themselves." I'll take my Grammy now. Just kidding. But
Do this alone.
so like, I'll show you what I got going on here.
Foggy street.
Oop.
To Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. And I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone.
And so yeah, the idea is that Jonas ends the word, or says the word alone by themselves. Hey Jestedic, how's it going? But I wanted to cascade this because I just felt like that was a really cool little thing. So the way that it worked is that I heard what William and Jonas were doing. We kind of know the main line for this section. But William has their part.
Wake me up on Saturday, grab my hand and float away into the abyss again, and I will always be your friend.
You can hear there's a little bit of pitch variation there between like these two tracks, which was just an issue that I encountered, but it's not really audible.
Friend.
Whenever like you get everything together.
So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this.
But yeah. And then, so what I decided to do was the way I do harmonies is I get my guitar and I sort of like play the chords. I played his chords on the guitar. And so that's kind of what I did is I learned the way to play, yeah, William has a great voice, honestly. But I learned how to play their harmony, and then I found a way to add on top of it. It is almost time for a break. But yeah, so my vocal part ended up sounding like this.
Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my...
And yeah. So I did that, and I go into falsetto, obviously, because I can't sing softly that high. But my goal was to make sure that together all the vocal tracks work. So if you listen to my harmonies with Williams,
grab my hand and float away into the abyss again, and I will always be your friend.
that one was really hard to get because it was it's a semitone apart.
Be your friend.
So I had to, believe it or not, I had to track most of this. I had to track this section without hearing the other two because I had like the melody line or the harmony line, and I just had to record that without the other tracks in there, so that I could make sure it was on pitch and everything like that, and it fits together.
So grab my hand, take my hand.
And yeah, so, and then I also made sure that they were compatible with Jonas's section.
Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again, and I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand.
And yeah, so then we end up with the final product of
Foggy streets and Christmas lights, wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again, and I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone.
And there we go. We end up with a pretty cool cascading harmony. I will say too, pro tip, I didn't do this here because the focus of this was part of what I had to leave out as part of my production, producing this in 4 hours, or mixing it in 4 hours. Part of that was that I wasn't able to edit it as tightly as I wanted to. And one particular thing that I do is that whenever there are harmonies like this, I will typically cut out the consonants of the harmony tracks. And that sounds weird, but this is the way that I put it. Go listen to, you can listen to a lot of songs that were, you can usually tell how tightly like some vocals were edited, because some songs will have like layered vocals and they won't always cut the consonants or certain things like that on the harmony tracks. And what you end up with is if say a track ends with S. An example I like to use is Again We Rise by Lamb of God, because in the chorus they have this like rise, and it's like a bunch of just like angry yells screaming rise, and at the end of it, the very end of the word rise, you can hear and it's because they didn't cut off the S's of that ending. And not to say that the machine's producing is bad. That dude's done a lot of really good work, and I don't expect Lamb of God to have necessarily that type of producing, but it helps a lot, because the thing is the only track that you need to hear the consonants on are the lead vocal tracks. Hearing it in harmony tracks, while it's not necessary to remove them, like I said, I didn't do it here, it can be distracting to hear three people say t at different times, but like trying to rhythmically do the same thing. And yeah, some people will say like, oh, you should just, get all the people to do a rhythmically correct like a choir. And it's like, sometimes you don't have that time for that. Sometimes you don't have the time for that. And if you don't, then I say just cut out the consonants on the harmony tracks. Focus on the vowels, which is where you'll get the notes. You don't really need the consonants on harmony tracks. That's how I'll clean up a lot of stuff. If you look back on episode 1 of this, which I have uploaded to YouTube now on a playlist on the Second Glass Beach channel, I talk about that a little bit on a track I mixed called Desert Flower by Fleece Kawasaki. I did that for all of his harmony tracks. I just cut out the consonants to make it smoother, and so that the idea is that the harmony track is never peeking out in front of the lead vocal. The harmonies always end before the lead vocal's like note dies out, and the consonants are cut out so that it's always under the lead vocal, just under it, so that it doesn't ever overshadow it. Like I said, that was a compromise I had to make here. I couldn't do that. It's not a big deal, obviously. I mean, you can hear that it sounds fine. This next section is like this right here. It's all of us singing the same part, and you can hear that.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. And I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone.
So you can hear some of what I was just talking about. You can hear some consonants are like getting spoken at different times. And if I had my way, if I had more time and I had my way, I would try to edit these to be more lined up. But I didn't have that time, and so but it doesn't sound so bad. And if you're looking to get big walls of sound, this is how you do it. It's a pretty one-on-one thing, but if you want to make a track sound bigger, you have to double track it rather than just copy and paste, because if you copy and paste, it'll literally just double the volume of that track, and it will sound exactly the same. Whereas like if you do multiple takes and you combine those, and then it'll make it sound like a whole lot wider. That's why you don't do a stereo track of a guitar rather than doing two separate mono takes and then panning them, because you want it to sound bigger. You don't want it to be double the volume. You want it to sound bigger. And that's the thing. Bigness and loudness are two different things, you know? Something can be loud but not sound as big. So, yeah. So we have this like wall of us singing this part in unison, and each of us are, you know, each of us have our own like parts that we're contributing. Like this is my voice.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. And I will always be your friend.
And then William, my voice gets a little bit more gruff and like, just like raspy whenever I get up there.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be your friend.
And then Jonas.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. And I will always be your friend.
Yeah, this vocal line is a little bit hard to sing, especially with that into the abyss again. Like that, yeah, that jump can be a real humdinger.
So grab my hand.
And then this little section is me and Jonas. I did. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it is Jonas. I did a harmony, and then I did an octave. So it sounds like this.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights.
So like, let's take a listen to that.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights.
Oh no, yeah, Jonas did the harmony on that. That's right. Okay, so Jonas did the harmony. I did the line there.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights.
And then I added the octave.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on.
And then a little Easter egg for y'all. Right after that, Jonas has a little secret line doing their best Evanescence and who was the band that I can't remember. The guy who did Wake Me Up with them. But yeah.
Wake me up!
And it just blew that out. So you can barely hear it, but
Up on Saturday.
but just enough. You know, it's
Nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be.
and I don't know what Jonas did here, but there's this. What's that shit? I don't know what that is. But it's a noise that Jonas made. Oh, and oh yeah, I forgot I added this in. So in one of the kazoo tracks, this is one of my favorite parts. So you can hear right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is it? Oh yeah, that's right. I cut it out of one of those and then let me.
Yeah.
Oh, that was cute.
Yeah.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on.
And then yeah, and then we finish up that section.
Grab my hand. Take my hand. I can't do this alone.
And this last section, the way the vocals are divided up is that these two tracks are William and Jonas, both on these tracks. So like this one is William and Jonas. Same thing with this one. It's a little bit quieter. I forgot what I specifically did with that. Oh yeah, I lowered it for where is it? Yeah. I lowered it to kind of like back up what's going on here. And then I decided what would be really nice. Oh, hey, Overzealous. How's it going? I decided in this last section, rather than doing like a super high thing or whatever, I decided instead to just bust out my fun fact. In high school, despite the fact that I'm a baritone/tenor 2, I was one of the only people who could hit super low notes, so I was assigned bass 2 for some songs. So yeah, I have a decently wide range, and so I decided to bust out that for this.
Na 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 na.
And I didn't worry too much about it being like exactly on pitch for these things, because it's supposed to be like, you know, rough and like a tavern kind of like a shanty.
Na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Yeah, and thanks, Jiraiya. And I also added on that's partially why the Neutron 3 elements like plugin here is focusing on like adding a lot of like low end and warmth to this section, is particularly for this to sound like thicker. And then so William had this part that I really wanted to be included. I want y'all to let's hear the section first.
To make it feel more like
So that was that section. There's one track by William though. If you ever wondered if William could pull off Judas Priest, that one note kills me because it's so power metal. It's so good, like genuinely. But yeah. And along with the quad tracked guitars that are sort of like put in the background and the kazoos, we have this little shanty ending. Also, if you ever wonder what it sounded like if William got abducted by aliens. And then a little raspy home at the end. But yeah, and that's pretty much all that's going on in this, you know. We have some like effects tracks. I didn't really use the delay on anything, I don't think. Yeah, no. The vocal effects ended up only being like reverb, really. I didn't really have to add anything else. And yeah, it's kind of that simple from there. yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I guess we should go over what I've got going on the master buses right here. William has a really nutty range too. Yeah, William has the range that I see so many singers wish that they have. It's very good. Oh, to be singing harmonies with the Glass Beach Band, such a vibe. Yes, it is. It is very much a vibe to be singing with these great musicians, especially considering that like I haven't really done much vocal stuff in the past few years. Most of the vocal stuff I do is like stuff in production where I add to harmonies that are very much in the background and whatnot. So this was nice to get to like showcase my voice a little bit with them. So let's talk a little bit about what I've got going on the master buses. Let's take a look at the punk section, because that's probably a good section to check out. So the first thing I have added here is a little stereo width plugin. There's a lot of different types of plugins for this. I don't do a ton, because the idea is that if you bring the width all the way up, you end up losing your center image, almost like a mid-side mic placement. You can really lose your stereo image that way, or your center stereo image that way. So I had just a hair, just 12% over the normal, like 100% is the default. So I just like 12%, just to make all the instrumentation make just a slight crevice, so that it's all just slightly wider, but like not leaving too much of a crevice that can't be filled by lead vocals. Which, if I haven't, I've mentioned this in past sessions, but all of my tracks lead into appropriate subgroups. Obviously, I don't have drums on this, but I've got a bass subgroup, guitar subgroup, keys, which is technically like kazoo in this, and it's used for synth and whatnot, and vocals and whatnot. But all the subgroups except for the main vocals are going through this submaster, so all of them are having this stereo width applied to them. But the main vocal track is foregoing the submaster and going straight to the master, so it's sitting just on top of all this stuff, and it's excluded from the stereo width, so it's filling up that area, and it's also just barely staying on top of everything else in the mix. I also have a compressor that is doing very slight amount of work. Come on.
Friday nights, foggy streets, and
But yeah. Wait. Yeah.
Christmas lights wake me up on Saturday.
And that compressor itself is just there to make sure everything is not going above a certain a level, so that the things that peak out above it are staying on top of it. So I kind of have that going. I have a decent amount of it in there so that I can add the tonality of this compressor, because I like the way this one sounds. I've got a de-esser on the master bus for all the vocals to smooth them off. I kind of explained de-essing before. I only did about 3 dB of de-essing to the vocals, so that it gets rid of that edge to the high end, and also any other instruments that are dealing with that. And a little trick that I learned to make your tracks pop is I did about a 3 dB boost at 10K after the de-essing, which helps give it like a nice little shine afterwards. Like you can kind of hear.
Grab my hand and float away.
That's without.
To the abyss again.
And that's with.
I will always
It brightens it up just a hair, just enough to what I need. And after all of that, I have a multi-band compressor. And the multi-band compressor is not doing a ton of compression. It's doing just enough to activate each section of compression, and I just did a slight amount of level adjusting.
wake me up on Saturday.
And I really like multi-band compressors because you can do stuff like this. You can take a
And
listen.
Chris,
Okay, cool. So you can hear the low end. You can hear that. Lower mids.
To the
Upper mids.
I will always be.
And then highs.
So
And you can kind of just go through and mess with those settings and whatnot. Is there a reason why Jay wasn't on it besides them being in hell? This was a surprise track. We did this as a surprise for Jay. So the idea was that on over the weekend, Jonas hit me up and let me know about William's idea, and we thought it would just be a really cool idea. We got together on Tuesday, the day before it hit a million. It was going to hit 1 million streams, and we just decided to do it as a surprise, just to show that we like really love the song, and I don't know, it just sounded like a fun little thing. So the main reason is just because it was sort of a present to Jay, more or less. It was also a fun little thing we did. That ended up being cool for everybody who likes Glass Beach, but largely for Jay. But yeah, thanks. It was mostly William and Jonas's idea initially, and then I was just really on board with it, so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So after all that stuff that I have, on the master bus, the last thing I have is Neutron 3. And Neutron 3, I'll start with like a general mix bus preset, and then I'll mess around with it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll go into the track assistant and I'll let it listen, and I'll see some of the changes it would make, and then I'll go back to default and I'll like test out different methods of doing stuff, and not a ton going on here. A little bit of a high pass at the lower end, dipped out some like these like lower mids, and boosted right around, I think this is like 2K, and then small boost here. Had a compressor to level everything off, keep it from peaking or anything like that, and then an exciter, and added a little bit of warmth, not a ton, because you add too much and it'll start fucking with some other stuff. So, and you end up with, that's without Neutron, or here, let's see, without Neutron, with Neutron, and yeah, and that's kind of what we end up with. So that's more or less the breakdown of the track and how everything's done. Obviously didn't use any drum tracks here. I can just get rid of all of that. And we just have this, and then final product, y'all. Let's take a listen from the beginning.
How could I ever sleep at night?
When you left me paralyzed. Trying to keep my head above the waves. Holding out for brighter, better days.
And you pushed, slipped me up to let me down. Every single time you come around, I'm making friends who don't know who I am. Trying to turn the herd into a brand.
I'm blue dreaming about the better times. Anything to bring me close to you. Anything to take me back to Friday nights. Foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again, and I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone.
Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone. Friday nights, foggy streets and Christmas lights. Wake me up on Saturday. Grab my hand and float away into the abyss again. I will always be your friend. So grab my hand, take my hand, I can't do this alone. Na, 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 na,
And yeah, that's what we got. Overzealous. The way you hit the "I am on your Versailles" gets me. Thank you. I thought that was something I did very intentionally. I liked that part, and I was like, I like that little jump to that low note, so I really wanted to put that in there. And yes, the kazoos are fucking priceless. That was kind of the thing. That's what I like about it, is that, like, if it's not like I was telling Thrillby before, if it's not immediately apparent to you that this was just for fun and not something that I consider to be like a masterpiece of like mixing skill for me, then it's like, I don't know what to tell you, because like, yeah, the kazoos sound goofy and it's on purpose. But yeah, so pretty much that's the track, and that's pretty much like all we got on that. We have one track submitted to us for critiquing today, and so I want to take a listen to that really fast. And it's by Thrillby themselves. It's called "Life is Antimatter," and I haven't had the chance to listen to it, so we're gonna take the time to listen to it and see what we can say about it.
already lost. I know it seems like we can't pay the cost, but there's something I know for sure. If we die and the planet burns, we can live a better life without all this clatter. We can live a life as antimatter because we already know that nothing really matters anymore. We already know that nothing really matters anymore.
Okay, so yeah, first things first. That was a very cool track. I like the whole vibe of the track. I think that the drums having parts that sound very digital and like super compressed works really well with like the vocals that you have going on there. Remind me kind of some like new wave stuff in a lot of ways. And I kind of like that the vocals have both like a sort of bright eyes quality to them, but also it is mixed in with sort of the like all the synths and stuff going on. I think overall it's a really good track. The few things that I would say about it that you might be able to extract some more value out of is I think that in the sections where there's hi-hat close to the beginning, like let me find a section. Yeah, like right here. I think that you could afford to dip the hi-hat out a little bit and this is and if there's an option for it, I think lowering the velocity on every other hit of the hi-hat might help out a little bit in that, because it doesn't overshadow anything majorly, but hi-hat really does cut through a whole lot, and I found that a way to like sort of tame it down a little bit is keep it at a level where it's like the distinct qualities of it come out, but also for every hit that's not on a like 1 or 3 upbeat or on a downbeat or whatever and whatnot, every second or fourth beat, just have the hi-hat velocity be just a little bit lower, to soften the intensity on those spots. I think that could benefit it a little bit. I like that the general vibe of the track is that's sound good. I wasn't aware of how to change the velocity when I made this, so I'll try that. Oh, okay, yeah, and like I'm not sure what to what extent you're able to do that. So like, you know, at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. I would say if you can't change the velocity, maybe just pulling it back just a hair would be a really good way to like to tame it a little bit. I like that the entire track has like a level of warmth to it. There's a lot of that coming from like the drums and the compression and whatnot. I think something that you could stand to do is to add a little brightness to the end. One trick that you might be able to use is the thing that I was talking about earlier here that I have going on, where I DS everything above like 7K at about like minus 3 dB, and then just do a 3 dB boost at about 10K. It's a very simple little thing, and it'll add like a little bit of brightness to your track. That being said, if you wanna maintain more, if you try that out and it takes away from like the warmth of what you like with that track and whatnot, one thing you can try also is adding in some saturation. I like using tape saturation plugins and whatnot, because these can add a good amount of like high end that still has like harmonic saturation and doesn't subtract from the warmth, but still keeps the aggression that you're like looking for and whatnot. So yeah, I think that a little bit of brightness might highlight some of the stuff. Something that might take away from this is that it's supposed to be transitioned to another song afterwards, which is why the ending seems kind of sudden. Oh, okay. And yeah. And I mean that might be the thing. There might be more context to it that I'm missing. So definitely, like I said, take anything I say here with a grain of salt for what works better for the transition. The brightening up thing is just a general mix thing that can be foregone depending on like how dark or warm you want the track, as opposed to, you know, being bright. I think that the main things I think can benefit from brightening up are a couple of the synth parts and the snare drum mainly. So you might try it on those individually if brightening up the whole track doesn't sound like it'll be conducive to what you're trying to do. And I think that also I was wondering what you thought about how I incorporated cold weather backing vocals. Oh, that I gotta listen to that again because I didn't quite catch that, but
I know for sure. Like we've already lost.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that was a synth at first. That makes sense now that I'm listening to that. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that a lot. Sampling like that's really interesting, and I think it definitely works to it. I know she talked about being hesitant about the vocals in that latter section. And I do want to say that I think generally they work. I think that if there's anything about them that you could possibly improve on, I would try adding something like I would try adding a little bit of chorus to them, because I think that you could I think it would help blend it in some more with some stuff that's in the instrumentation. But yeah, I think generally though the vocals there sound good. But you could definitely, if you added some chorus, I think it would both differentiate it in a few ways, but it would also blend it in with some of the instrumentation that's going on. but really, I think for the most part, it sounds like a really good track, and those are really the only things that the only notes that I really have on it. It's a really cool track though. I'm happy that you shared it with us. But yeah, okay, so I have got to go and take a break and grab some food and stuff, do a few things. I'll probably be back on later. Jonas is not going to be streaming today, so I will probably come back. I'll probably stream like Monster Hunter or something like that. I do have to get some Overwatch practice in, but yeah, I gotta go and do some stuff though, grab some food, get up and stretch my legs, do that kind of stuff. But I'll post whenever I'm gonna get back on. I appreciate everybody for showing up. Like I said, I'm gonna try to be more timely about putting these up on the YouTube. I've got the first 3 episodes up on there if you want to go and look. It's on the Second Glass Beach channel. It's a playlist just titled Music Mondays. So y'all can go ahead and look at that. What do you think of this in comparison to the other song I submitted before? I think that this song definitely has more of a if I'm not mistaken, it feels more upbeat, and so in oh wait, hold on. Yeah, I think that okay, yeah, now I remember. Okay, so I think in comparison it's got more of a new wave vibe feeling kind of thing and whatnot. It feels like there's a little bit of influence from like, you know, The Cure or like or the Smiths or something like that in there, which is interesting. I think it's cool. And I think it still maintains that aesthetic that I think that you have. So I think it's a really good track that blends in good with your style. I definitely say like try some of those things out that I mentioned. If they work for you, cool. If they don't, let me know, and I'll be happy to see if we can figure something else out that might help a little bit. But yeah, thank y'all so much for coming. You know, if anybody is here and watching that isn't part of our Patreon, there's a link in chat from Moobot. We have our Patreon. Once we pass 300 patrons, we'll be posting some new goals in which we'll be able to like do some more stuff. We'll actually be able to we'll be closer to doing this more full time, and we'll be able to put out more cool content for y'all. So if y'all can check that out. Either way, thank you for showing up. I'll see y'all guys later today. Y'all have a good one. Bye bye.